I never imagined myself in this position. Not in a million years. I was the loyal one. The wife who stayed. The woman who chose duty over desire every single time, until I didn't. I've been married for 7 years. My husband, Mark, is dependable, stable, and maybe too much of both. He's the kind of man who folds laundry the second it's dry, always pays bills on time, and never forgets to service the car. He's good. Safe. But lately, that safety feels suffocating. We don't talk much anymore, not really. The conversations are transactional. Did you pick up the dry cleaning? What time is your meeting? Can you grab milk on the way home? The intimacy that once made my chest flutter has become routine, scheduled, silent. I convinced myself that it was normal, that marriage just loses heat over time, that wanting more meant I was selfish. And then he moved in. Devin, 24. A grad student who needed a place to stay while finishing his degree. Mark had no issue renting out the guest house out back. We could use the extra income. I was the one who showed him around when he first arrived. He was polite, charming in that low-key way, and when he smiled, there was something boyish but confident behind it. I didn't notice it then. Or maybe I did but didn't want to admit it. The first few weeks were nothing out of the ordinary. He kept to himself mostly. We crossed paths a few times, packages left at the main house, casual small talk in the driveway, or him helping me carrying groceries. He had this ease about him. The way he looked me in the eye. The way he always seemed present. I wasn't used to that. One afternoon, I saw him coming back from a run. His shirt was soaked, clinging to his chest, and for a second, I just stood there. I should have looked away. I didn't. He smiled, said, "Afternoon," like it was nothing, but my stomach fluttered. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way his skin glistened, the strength in his shoulders, the effortless confidence in his stride. I told myself I was just lonely, that I was projecting, that it was a harmless fantasy. But fantasies don't make your skin heat up when someone walks into a room. Fantasies don't make you linger by a window just to catch a glimpse of someone working out in the yard. I started finding reasons to talk to him, asking about his classes, offering him leftovers, inviting him to join us for dinner when Mark was working late. He always said yes, always smiled that same easy smile. One evening, we ended up sitting outside together. Mark was on a business trip. Devin and I shared a bottle of wine under the patio lights. We talked about music, books, things I hadn't talked about in years. He actually listened. Not just nodded, but really listened. His eyes never left mine. It made me feel real again. Desired, even if no word said so. That night, I lay in bed and imagined his hands instead of Mark's. I told myself it was just curiosity, a spark in a dark corner of my mind. Nothing more. But something had shifted. A few days later, I passed by the guest house to drop off some mail. The door was ajar. I knocked. He told me to come in. He was shirtless again, fresh from a shower, towel around his waist. I should have apologized, backed out. I didn't. I stood there a second too long. He didn't cover up. Didn't smirk. He just looked at me, calm, steady. That moment cracked something in me. The dream started after that. Intense, vivid. I'd wake up sweating, aching, reaching for something that wasn't there. I'd make breakfast for Mark in the morning, kiss him goodbye, and the whole time my mind would be somewhere else, on someone else. I began to notice how differently I behaved when Devin was around. A little more effort with my hair. Lip gloss even when I had nowhere to go. I told myself it was innocent, that it felt good to feel attractive again, that it didn't mean anything. But it did. One afternoon, we were in the kitchen. He came by to return a book I'd lent him. I turned to grab something from the counter, and he moved behind me, brushing past. It was the smallest touch, his chest against my back, just for a second, but it sent a jolt through me. I didn't move. Neither did he. Then he stepped back and mumbled, "Sorry," and I laughed it off like it was no big deal. But my hands were shaking. Later that night, I stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her lips were slightly parted. Her eyes weren't soft with contentment. They were sharp with craving. I started finding excuses to be near him. I'd bake just enough cookies that I'd have a reason to bring him a plate. I'd water the plants near his place instead of asking him to do it like usual. Each time, our conversations grew longer, closer. It wasn't just physical. That's what made it worse. He made me laugh. He remembered things I said. He complimented the little things, my earrings, the way I pronounced certain words, how I moved when I laughed. I could feel something building. I could feel it in my chest, tight and dangerous. I wanted him, not just to look, not just to dream. I wanted to touch, to taste, to fall. And the worst part? I didn't feel sorry. Not yet. Mark noticed I'd been distracted lately. Asked if everything was okay. I kissed him and said yes. I said it so easily, so convincingly, that I scared myself. Lying came too naturally now. One morning, I saw Devin stretching on the back deck. Headphones in, eyes closed, lost in whatever music was in his ears. I stood at the window and watched. He looked peaceful, powerful. My breath caught. I wasn't thinking about consequences. Only that I wanted him to want me back. The next time we talked, he leaned against the doorframe and said, "You okay? You've been quiet." I said, "I'm fine," but we both knew I wasn't. Something was coming. Something irreversible. And part of me, a shamefully loud part, wanted it. Not because I didn't love my husband, but because I missed feeling alive. Because I missed feeling like a woman, not a ghost in a good marriage. I should have stopped it right there. I didn't. I couldn't. And that's where the real story begins. I told myself it was a mistake. Just a moment of weakness. A stupid kiss shared in a haze of wine and bad judgment. I told myself I wouldn't let it happen again. That I'd be stronger next time. But the truth is, I didn't want to be strong. I wanted more. The next day, I acted like nothing happened. I was polite, cool, detached. Devin mirrored me, like we'd both silently agreed to pretend. But underneath every word was heat. Every pause lingered too long. Every glance felt like a question. We never spoke about the kiss. We didn't need to. It hung between us, pulsing with everything unsaid. Mark came home from his trip the following night. I greeted him like always, cooked his favorite pasta, listened to his stories about boring meetings and flight delays. He didn't notice that I flinched every time he touched me. He didn't notice that my mind was somewhere else the entire evening. Or maybe he did and chose not to see it. The next few days passed in slow torture. Every time I saw Devin, my skin prickled. We stayed careful, distant, but the tension never faded. It only thickened. My body remembered his lips. My mind replayed the way he didn't hesitate when I kissed him. The way his hand hovered at my waist before he pulled back. That tiny moment haunted me. I started inventing errands. Long drives with no destination. Random coffee runs. I couldn't stay still. I couldn't think straight. Every part of me buzzed with want. It was wrong, but it felt too real to ignore. Then one evening it happened again. It wasn't planned. No one said anything. I was dropping something off, he opened the door, and we just stared at each other. I don't know who moved first. I just know our mouths met before I even took a breath. This kiss wasn't careful. It was hungry, reckless. My hands gripped his shoulders. His pulled me closer. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate. Afterward, I ran. I didn't look back. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to break free. I locked the door behind me, sat on the floor of the bathroom, and stared at nothing for 20 minutes. I was shaking. I should have felt ashamed. But all I felt was the afterglow of being touched like I mattered. The next morning, everything looked the same. Mark kissed my cheek and left for work. I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry, checked emails. But I was different. My body remembered the way Devin tasted. My mind was already imagining the next time. We didn't stop. We didn't talk about what we were doing. But every time we were alone, we gave in. There was no awkwardness, no confusion. We moved like magnets. Every time he touched me, I felt worshipped, desired in a way that I hadn't felt in years. I started craving him, not just physically, emotionally. He noticed little things. Asked questions no one else did. He made me laugh, genuinely laugh, at things that caught me off guard. I started opening up, telling him pieces of myself I hadn't shared in years. He listened like everything I said mattered. My marriage faded into the background. I still played the role. I still cooked, cleaned, smiled. But my heart wasn't in it. My thoughts were always somewhere else. One night, Devin traced a finger down my spine and whispered, "You deserve more than this." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I knew he was right. And it scared me more than anything. The guilt came in waves. Sometimes I'd cry in the shower, muffling the sounds so Mark wouldn't hear. Sometimes I'd stare at myself in the mirror and wonder who I was becoming. But the second I saw Devin, all of it disappeared. He made me feel alive again. That kind of need is addictive. We became careful, more calculated. Texts were deleted, calls avoided. We didn't meet unless it felt safe. But the secrecy only added to the thrill. Every touch, every breathless moment, felt more intense than the last. Mark started noticing small things. My phone was always on silent. I didn't reach for him in bed. He asked once if something was wrong, and I told him I was just tired. That work had been draining.
He believed me, or wanted to.
I started telling myself lies. That maybe this wasn't cheating if I wasn't in love. That maybe I was just reclaiming something I'd lost. That I could end it whenever I wanted. But the truth was, I didn't want to end it. Devin started showing up in my dreams. Not just in bed, but beside me on trips I'd never taken. Laughing with me in places I'd never been. He was filling spaces I didn't even know were empty. One afternoon, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers in my hair. He asked me what I wanted. I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. I told myself this would burn out, that it was just lust. But every time I tried to pull back, he'd look at me like I was the only woman in the world. And suddenly, I didn't care about anything else. The danger didn't register anymore. I wasn't afraid of being caught. I was afraid of it ending. And I knew that was the real problem. I woke up before the sun, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long I could keep pretending. The guilt didn't hit all at once anymore. It came in quiet, creeping moments, watching Mark drink his coffee, hearing him hum while shaving. Normal things. Familiar things. But they felt like echoes now.
Faint.
Distant. Devin had become my reality. Everything else was the lie. We were careful, always. But the more time passed, the bolder we got. It wasn't just about sneaking around anymore. It was the way I dressed. The way I'd smile at my phone. The excuses I came up with that Mark never questioned. I'd become someone else. Someone sharper. Lighter. Reckless. The intimacy with Devin deepened fast. We weren't just sleeping together. We talked about everything. His future. My regrets. He asked questions Mark had never thought to ask. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing, brought them up later like they mattered. He made me feel like a person again, not just a wife or a routine someone got used to. It was terrifying how easy it became to live a double life. I'd kiss Mark goodbye in the morning, smile like nothing was wrong, then lose myself in Devin by afternoon. I knew it couldn't last. I knew secrets always rot from the inside out. But I kept feeding the lie anyway. Devin was everything Mark wasn't. Passionate, attentive, unpredictable. He didn't move through life on autopilot. When he touched me, I melted. When he spoke, I listened. And when he looked at me, I forgot who I was supposed to be. There were nights I'd lay in bed next to my husband and feel physically sick with guilt. Not because I didn't care about him, but because I was too far gone to fix it. I didn't even want to. We started meeting more often. Shorter gaps between texts. More time stolen in moments that weren't ours to take. The fear of being caught was still there, but it faded behind everything we felt when we were together. It was like the rules of my life no longer applied when he touched me. I started lying to my friends, too. Canceling brunches, dodging calls, avoiding anyone who might see through me. I couldn't risk it. One wrong sentence, and the whole thing would come crashing down. Mark tried to connect a few times. asked if we could go away together, suggested we see a therapist. I smiled and said we'd figure it out. I told him I loved him. The words felt thin in my mouth. There was a night when Devin held me after, longer than usual. He didn't say anything, just breathed with me, his hand over my heart. I remember thinking, this is going to end badly. But I didn't stop.
I didn't want to.
The lies started slipping into muscle memory. I'd tell Mark I was running errands when I was really driving around just to think. I'd come home smelling like Devin and convince myself he'd never notice. One day, Mark left work early and surprised me. I wasn't doing anything wrong in that moment, but the panic that shot through me was instant. It reminded me that I was living on borrowed time. Every step forward was a step closer to the cliff. Devin noticed the change, said I was acting tense,
Distant.
I told him it was nothing. I couldn't admit that the lines between fantasy and reality were blurring too fast. I caught myself wondering what it would look like if I left. If I told Mark the truth, packed a bag, started over. But that wasn't a real option.
Not yet. I was still too comfortable in the lie.
Too scared of the cost. Sometimes I thought Devin saw through me, that maybe he knew this wasn't sustainable. But he never pushed. He never asked me to choose. He just kept showing up. I started imagining what would happen if someone else found out. If my sister saw a text. If a neighbor said the wrong thing. My heart would pound at the thought. But it never stopped me. Every part of my life became a performance. I was smiling, baking, organizing weekend plans, while quietly unraveling beneath the surface. Devin was my escape, but the pressure of keeping it hidden was starting to show. I knew it couldn't go on like this. Something had to give. But I didn't know how to end it.
Or if I even wanted to.
We had a fight once. A small one. I said something cold, trying to create distance, and he just looked at me and said, "Don't push me away because you're scared." I didn't reply. I couldn't, because that's exactly what I was doing. The problem was, I didn't know what scared me more. Losing Devin, or having to finally confront what I'd done. So I kept moving forward, deeper into the mess, knowing full well the fall was coming. It was a message I wasn't supposed to see. Mark had left his laptop open while grabbing something from the garage. My eyes skimmed the screen out of habit, not intent. The email was from a private investigator. 2 lines.
Short. Direct.
She's hiding something. I'll have more by end of week. My heart stopped. Everything froze. I stared at those words until they blurred. He knew. Or, at least he suspected enough to go looking. I closed the laptop and walked to the sink, hands shaking, trying to look normal. He came back in, kissed the top of my head, and asked what I wanted for dinner. I mumbled something and smiled. Later that night, I lay in bed beside him, wondering how long he'd been watching me, how many lies he had tracked, how much he had already pieced together. Devin didn't know. I didn't tell him. There was no right move anymore. Every option meant destruction. I considered ending it with Devin. Not because I wanted to, but because I thought I had to. But when I tried, the words didn't come. He looked at me like I was his, and for a moment, I wanted to disappear into him. Pretend we weren't living in borrowed time. That week dragged like a countdown. Every time Mark looked at me, I flinched inside. Every time he left the room, I wondered if it was to meet with the investigator. I couldn't eat. I barely slept. My body moved like a stranger inside my own life. Then one evening, Mark asked me to sit down. His tone was calm, too calm. He said he wanted to talk. My stomach dropped. He didn't accuse.
He didn't yell.
He just asked questions, subtle ones, meant to corner me gently. Where had I gone last Tuesday? Why did the grocery receipt say, I only bought one thing? Why had I been so quiet lately? I lied. Easily. Too easily. I saw it in his eyes. He didn't believe a word. But he didn't push. Just nodded and said he was tired. I walked out that night. Straight to Devin's. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak at first. I just pressed myself into him like he was the only solid thing left. He asked what was wrong. I told him everything. The investigator. The questions. The email. All of it. He listened, jaw tight, silent for a long time. Then he asked me what I wanted to do. I didn't answer. I didn't know. I was standing on a crumbling edge. The next few days were a blur. Mark stopped trying to pretend. The silence between us turned sharp. We barely made eye contact. Every dinner was a ritual in avoidance. He wasn't asking questions anymore. He was waiting. And then he confronted me. Full truth. No build-up. Just held up his phone and asked, "Who is he?" My chest caved in. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. The evidence was all there. Photos.
Times.
Locations. Devin and me, caught in stolen moments we thought were invisible. Mark didn't shout.
He didn't cry.
His voice cracked once, but his hands stayed steady. That hurt more than anything. The way he held himself together while looking at me like I was a stranger. He asked if I loved Devin. I didn't answer. He asked how long it had been going on. I told him months. He just nodded and walked away. I moved out that night.
Packed a bag in silence.
He didn't stop me.
Didn't say goodbye.
Just watched me go. Devin offered for me to stay with him. I said yes. At first it felt like relief. Like we were finally free. But the weight hit fast. The consequences, the damage, the reality of what I'd done, it all came crashing in. My phone blew up. Friends. Family. My sister demanded answers. My mother cried. Everyone had something to say. Most of it I deserved. The world didn't end. It just cracked. And I was left trying to make sense of the pieces. Living with Devin was different once the fantasy was gone. No more hiding, no more secrecy. It was real. And it was harder than I expected. We had moments, good ones. He still made me laugh. Still held me like I mattered. But now there were pauses between us. Awkward silences that hadn't been there before. He'd catch me staring out the window too long. I'd catch him watching me with questions in his eyes. One night, he asked if I regretted it. I told him I didn't know. Because I didn't. I regretted hurting Mark. I regretted the lies. But the way Devin made me feel, that was the one thing that had felt honest. I started therapy. Alone. No agenda, but to understand myself. I needed to figure out why I'd burned everything down. Why being desired had mattered more than being safe. Mark filed for divorce.
Clean.
No drama. He didn't ask for much. He just wanted space. I gave it to him. Devin stayed. He didn't run. But I saw the shift. The innocence was gone. We weren't two people caught in something forbidden anymore. We were just two people flawed, exposed, vulnerable. Some nights we still made love like we were starving. Other nights we lay back to back in silence, wondering if this was worth the wreckage. I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know if Devin and I will last. But I know I've changed. I'm not the same woman who used to ignore the ache in her chest. I made a choice. A brutal one. And now I'm living with it. One breath, one day at a time. This isn't a happy ending. It's just the truth. And sometimes that has to be enough.